We always begin talking about what's important in life and how the Hara will definitely help every person as much as the Hara can do, is to be distracted from what's important. The Hara is like a fly as compared to a zvuv, to a fly, which does two things. Number one, the fly distracts you. So the Hara is always trying to distract the person from their focus. We think that the Hara is your taivus, and the Hara is your laziness, and the Hara is all of those, which is a little bit of it. The main goal of the Hara is just to get you off of your focus of what's important and what's true in your life and what's the most important in your life. That's the first thing that the fly does, is the fly keeps you distracted. It distracts you naturally from whatever you're doing. The second thing that the fly is king at doing, and that is the fly is great at attacking not attacking, but hanging around the garbage and hanging around negativity, hanging around, if somebody has a wound. So where does the fly go on your body? If you have a cut and you have some blood, the fly goes over there. So the zvuv, the Hara, not only does he distract you, but what he does is he sort of helps focus you on your negative points and your negative parts. He doesn't want you to think that you're capable. He doesn't want you to think that you could accomplish. He doesn't want you to look at all of the good things, right? It's like the guy who pushes himself to get out of bed in the morning and pushes himself to have a good day. And then at the end of the day, right, and he works hard and he tries to accomplish, he tries to have a successful day. And then at the end of the day, his thoughts are all like, what did you do anyway? What did you accomplish? You could have done more, whatever it might be. Always taking a circumstance that you're trying to do well and trying to accomplish, and always going to remind you of what you're not doing, what you have not done, right? We've all had, I'm sure, that experience with the, either the teacher or or someone where you took your test and you got, all of them right except for one or two, and the natural thing is to say, what happened with these one or two that you got wrong? There's nothing wrong with looking and to see what you made a mistake on. But when the hyper focus and the agenda is to see what you've done wrong and to correct what you've done wrong, not that there's anything wrong with seeing what you've done wrong, but when that's thank you very much, when that's the focus of the person or the thought or whatever it is, that's something that is very much, like we said yesterday, in the negativity. What's negative, what I'm not doing right, what's not working, as opposed to what is working and what I am doing well, and focusing on the positive, focusing on and when a person usually looks at it that way, and a person spends the time to actually think about the positive things that they're doing and list the things that they're doing that are positive, that are good things. If a person would make a list, there's no doubt in my mind, if a person would make a list of all the positive things, and in all relationships it's like this, you look at all the wonderful things that you have in a certain relationship, in your life, whatever it might be, they outweigh the negative by thousands and thousands and thousands. When you're in that negative mode, everything seems to be negative, because that's the Hara. The Hara says, he blows up the zvuv, makes it all about the fly, makes it all about the negative. So not only am I distracting you from your pursuit in life, what I'm doing is I'm having you hyper-focus on all the negative. all the negative things that you have. I remember I heard once from a very hush of a person. They were talking about that they brought their daughter, who was a little bit older, for a shidduch, to get a bracha, and the daughter was maybe 24 or 25 years old, and she wasn't married yet. And so the mother brought her to the tzaddik, whoever it was, and said, oh yeah, I'm so upset. I have my daughter, and she's not married. And the tzaddik told her. I remember she told this to me. And the tzaddik told her and said, one second, you have a daughter who's a healthy daughter, who's a wonderful person, and spent like a minute describing how blessed you are, and let's focus on that. Now you have a problem. What's the problem? The problem is you need a shidduch, right? So what happens in life is that's how the Yetzer Hara works. The Yetzer Hara takes something that's negative, and he blows up and he magnifies that which is negative, and then what happens is our focus is not only is it not on what we're good at and what we want to do and what we are focused on. So that's the first thing he does is he throws you off. Number two is he lands you in a problem and makes that problem everything. That's what the Yetzer Hara does. So one of the things that's important for us to do is to battle that. And I think the way to battle that is exactly those two ways. Number one is to keep the focus of what is important and what's not important. What is life about and what is life not about? What are the things that are going to bring me my happiness? What are the things that are going to help me be successful? What are the things that I really truly want to connect with? And how do I remind myself? And I think that's the key, to remind ourselves. It's not something like, oh, I got it, right? I got it, and that's it. Every day, it's important for a person to remind himself, to remind yourself to say, okay, what's important and how do I want to live my life? And the more a person keeps his eye on the prize, his eye on the, right, I think it's a mashal from the Dubna Maggid, the mashal, maybe not the Dubna Maggid, I'll have to look it up, where the kid was, was in the forest, and someone was walking through, and he had a bow and arrow, and he saw that the kid had a bullseye every time. So he says, "How did you do it? How did you get a bullseye?" He looked at all the trees, and he said, "How did you get a bullseye every time?" So he said, I went over I shot the arrow, and then I went over to the tree, and I painted around the arrow for the bullseye." What's the pshat? What they say the nimshal to that is that you keep if you keep your focus, you keep your main thing the main thing. You're always drawing it'll always be a bullseye. So it'll always be a bullseye. But why? Because you keep your focus on what's the most important thing. What is my most important thing? And that's what the Yetzer Hara always wants to do. Yetzer Hara always wants us to distract ourselves from the most important. That's why it's important to talk about Hilchos Loshon Hara and to talk about life, Mesilas Yesharim, to talk about important things. Why? Because nobody wants to talk about other people, right? Nobody wants to talk about other people. Even if you want to, deep down you don't want to. You want to focus on yourself. You want to develop yourself. You don't want to have, right, we learned this morning, I learned with my shir, right, one of the reasons people are mevatel Torah, they don't learn Torah, is for one basic reason. I mean, he brings three reasons. But the second reason he says is because people just talk nonsense. They just sit around and talk about nothingness. So nobody wants to just talk about, we want to talk about nothingness, and he says he doesn't even understand where the enjoyment comes from to talk about nothingness. But when a person is able to remind himself as consistently, as persistently as possible, to say, I don't want to talk about other people, I don't want to hear about other people, I want to talk about myself, I want to talk about my life, I want to talk about what my life was, I want to talk what my life is, I want to be able to pursue what I want to pursue. That's how a person can distract the Yetzer Hara from trying to distract him. And the positivity is also very important, to know your strengths, to know what you're strong at, to know, we spoke yesterday more about, going into, and this includes your strengths as well. We spoke about, right, it's funny, I spoke to someone recently and he was telling me based on the shir yesterday, and it was very good. He said, because we spoke about, people who are shy, and he says, it's so funny. He says, I've always struggled that I'm a naturally shy person. And he was so happy that we spoke about yesterday how, what's wrong with being shy? Maybe shy is actually, not actually, it is a midah tova, right? It's one of the proofs that you're a Jew. It says, a baishan, someone who has a little bit of embarrassment, so you're shy. So you look at it as a negative, but really it's a positive, right? Part of what's so important for us to remember is where we come from and the strengths we have from where we come from and the weaknesses that we have from where we come from. But they're both equally important to know. It's about knowing yourself. It's about developing yourself. And then to really realize how much strength and how much positivity and how much we all have, no matter what your circumstances are with the negatives that you have. Everybody has negatives. Everybody has problems. Everyone has challenges from their parents, from their teachers, from their everybody. There's not anyone. And you know what? As good as a father you're going to be, and as good of a husband you're going to be, your children are going to have kindness on you too. They're going to say, "Well, you were to this," and that's okay. It's okay. The question is how extreme are the kindness going to be? How immature were you? Like we said, either yesterday or 2 days ago, you could be imperfect. We're perfectly imperfect. The question is, how imperfect are you? How imperfect? You want to try and strive to be as imperfect as you can be, but you're always going to be imperfect. You're always going to be someone who needs to work on himself. The question is, how much do you have to work on yourself? How bad is it? How bad was it? Okay, question, comments, please. Make a shakal. Baruch atah Adonai. Eino melech haolam shakol neved. Question, comments before we learn the Hilchos Loshon Hara. Yes, Daniel.
When you said overthinking things, you're talking about overthinking things and putting the thing that you could have that you didn't do enough and whatever, like in front. How do you what do you consider? What would you say is considered too much and too little?
Yeah, great question, Daniel. Great question. I think that what it does for you. What does my thinking do for me? If my thinking, most of the time you're thinking, if it a lot of times when you have a person who's a bright person, who has a lot of koach, who has a lot of brain power, a lot of the time that he overthinks is because he really doesn't have much that he's doing. If you're sitting around, one of the things that I've said that's part of the challenges of our generation, right, is you have a guy who can sit like this. You ever see, right? Some of you have watched me, have seen me do this before, but what a person who sits and watches a movie, what did he do for 2.5 hours, Daniel? If you saw a video of a guy watching a movie for 2 hours, right? Most movies are about 2 hours. Right? What did he do for 2 hours? He was sitting like this, Daniel. Sitting like this.
In terms of productivity.
Yeah, I'm saying he just sits like this.
There was something happening.
Yes, I'm not. There was something happening, but very limited happening. There's no productivity, and even his brain power. It's not like you're working, right? You're doing a math problem. You're doing a math problem. You're having a real deep, intellectual, stimulating, not a stupid conversation about something. A real brain, you're really, really delving in. Your brain is working. Your brain is working. What happens is the reason we're such an overthinking generation, right? It's one of the reasons I say that people, right? What do they call it when they'll dance? Maybe we'll have it by music night. I don't know if it's still popular. What's it called when they go like that? Headbanging. You heard my chiddush of why I know Rabbi Lazarus probably doesn't even know that they do this. You know, I've said people do that nowadays when they dance. They go like that because their heads are so, when you dance, it's hard to think. You don't think when you're dancing. You're moving your body. Our heads are so not used to thinking intellectually, critically thinking. We want to shut off our brains, but our brains are so powerful. So the overthinking sometimes happens when you sit around and do nothing. It's not that you're overthinking. Your brain is hungry for stimulation. It wants something. And when you don't give it that, it sort of gets out of control a little bit. It needs to be fed properly. So your question was, how do I know if I'm overthinking? So I have two comments to that. Number one is, how productive are you, and how much, I don't mean you, Daniel, how productive is the person using his brain? You have 24 hours. Let's say you sleep 8 hours. So you're left with another 16 hours. Out of those 16 hours, how much brain power am I using? That's number one. Number two is, right, what am I thinking about? Like we said yesterday, 80% of our thoughts are repetitive thoughts. So what am I actually thinking about? That's how you could tell if you're overthinking. Most people who are not productive, most people who are not really aware of what the thinking is doing, they're just in a spin, as I've said, one of my favorite quotes, the wheel is spinning, but the hamster's dead. You're just spinning in your brain. What is it bringing to you? What is it bringing to me? If you're not happy, if you have anxiety, that's probably overthinking. But I think the first thing is probably the most important, is how much am I using of my brain? How much am I using of my brain? Does that help a little bit, Daniel? Meaning you can't expect, I just want to be very clear, a guy who's not really using his brain can't be surprised if his brain is not working properly. Why would it? It's like any muscle. If you don't use a muscle, it starts getting weak. So you sit around, the person who's on his phone for 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, and he's having something else think for him, then of course not. Even music, I love music. Everyone listens to music. We love music. But that's also thinking for you. That's why it's amazing. You start learning, you start thinking, you ask questions, you get challenged. Yes, Rabbi Lazarus.
There's a writer at the end of around the turn of the 20th century, named James Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
His style of writing was such that he was able to have the reader, he thinks over his mind, he thinks for him. He was very, very talented. And television, when I remember television, it was, that's what people watch movies, you see family, they're sitting, now they have 2 televisions, 3 or 4 televisions, everybody has their own television, they're sitting around, you see them going, they're not thinking, it's taking over your mind.
Correct.
That's what they intend to do.
Right.
That is the kavanah behind
right.
Successful movies.
Correct.
They
Correct.
Exactly what Rosh Hashanah was saying. You give up your independent thought,
right,
and let someone else think for you.
Correct. And then thank you, Rabbi Lazarus. And then you wonder that you can't, that it's difficult for a person. It's very hard for a person, because if you think things through, when you think things through and you talk, that's why it's so important to talk to other people. Because when you're in your own head, that's why you do the head banging. Because you're in your own head. The only way to free my head is to go like that, and to hit your head, right? To hit your head. Well, they just go back and forth, because that clears out the head. Because otherwise, your head, if you jump around like that with your head, you don't think. Otherwise, you're filled with just thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. And like we said yesterday, what are my thoughts already? I haven't clarified. You speak to someone and you write out your thoughts. They say the Alter from Kelm. I mean, it's an incredible thing to say that. The Alter from Kelm knew every thought that entered his mind. I mean, you can't imagine. Every thought, he was in total control of what thought. Could you imagine how amazing you'd feel if you are not, or you're not, busy just being taken over? It's not even your thoughts. It's not even your thoughts. It's someone else's thoughts. Someone else's thoughts that they're implanting in you. Right? You hear, I hear my this one's voice in my head. This one's, yes, Benjamin.
It's so separate in this.
No problem.
What's the difference between someone's negative thoughts and attributes and the Hara? Are they the same thing?
That's a great question. I think that's a great question. I probably would not be able to tell you the answer to that question, but I could tell you that the Yetzer Hara, I'll answer like this a little bit, Benjamin. I'll answer like this. The Yetzer Hara doesn't need to do a lot of work sometimes on somebody because the person himself is doing the work for him. What do I mean by that? If a person does not try and work on himself, right? I say the mashal I always give is Esav. Where did Esav, the Medrash says, where did Esav hang out? It says that Esav hung out outside of the Beis Medrash. What did he do? Avram and Sarah would go ahead and give these shmuzim about life, and then Esav would sit where they had tents, whatever they did, talking about Hashem and Torah, whatever they spoke about. And then Esav would sit outside, and as people would come out, he'd say, what are they talking about, blah, 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 blah. Esav represents the Yetzer Hara. And where does the Yetzer Hara hang out? The Yetzer Hara hangs out around people who are actually working on themselves and trying to develop. Somebody who's not really doing much, the Yetzer Hara could just leave him alone because he doesn't really have to bother him so much. As I've said many times, somebody who sleeps all day, someone who does nothing all day, so the Yetzer Hara just could leave him alone because he's sort of, doing his thing anyway. Is that the Yetzer Hara? Right, so there is an aspect of the Yetzer Hara also, but the question is, how much am I doing? I'm not talking about someone who's incapable, someone who's totally incapable. I'm talking about someone who's not, usually the Yetzer Hara will attack you when you're trying to do something, when you're trying to accomplish something. When does the Yetzer Hara come? He comes when you're davening. He comes when you're learning. Yetzer Hara doesn't always come as much when you're eating, when you're playing basketball. It doesn't come when when a person's trying to grow, when a person's trying to change himself, then he has a very, very strong Yetzer Hara. So to answer your question, it's hard to say which thought is the Yetzer Hara, which thought is that. The feeling down about yourself, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling lazy, if you're someone who's beating yourself up on a consistent basis. Now, it could be the Yetzer Hara already just, infected you, and you're sort of just continuing it. But if you're a person who's trying to work on himself, and then thoughts come in that creep in, that's usually the Yetzer Hara. The way you feel about yourself, if you're down, if you're depressed, if you're sad, if you don't believe that you can do something, a lot of times that's the Yetzer Hara. A lot of times that's the Yetzer Hara. I don't know if that helps. Meaning someone like you, Binyamin, I would assume the Yetzer Hara is going to attack a lot, right? Someone like Binyamin, he's going to attack you. He's waiting right outside because he doesn't want you to come into the Beis Medrash. He doesn't want you to work on yourself because it's very clear that you're very dangerous for the Yetzer Hara. For a guy who's just, not so serious about, life, so the Yetzer Hara doesn't have to really start up with him so much because he's not in the ring really. He's not really with him so much. Yes?
It's kind of a silly thing on that question.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, not that it's not hard once I start learning, like Yetzer Hara doesn't, I feel like for me doesn't, I guess the personal, whatever, doesn't attack me so much like when I'm in the Beis Medrash, but like for me when I'm, let's say, because you said it doesn't get me to like be mavasa. You said something like before, it's not like that. It's not the thing that got me to like bum out and sit in bed for 2 hours. But I feel like for me, when I'm in bed, like it's like the Yetzer Hara just nails me. It's like, why get out of bed?
Correct. There's no question. Yeah. Yeah. Mashchel beis fendish. Right. Correct. But your Yetzer Hara, Baruch Hashem, your Yetzer Hara is more sophisticated because he knows he's not going to keep you. That's classic Yetzer Hara. Stay in bed. But I'm saying, but he knows you're going to get out of bed. So you're right. I'll tell you to stay in bed another half hour, another 45 minutes, another hour. Correct. Everyone, Yetzer Hara is very tricky to everybody. But my point is, the Yetzer Hara is going to attack people who are very, very, very dangerous for the Yetzer Hara. For a guy who's not doing much, he's not putting up a battle for the Yetzer Hara. Right? That's really the point. Correct. Your Yetzer Hara, we all have Yetzer Haras in different places at different times. But the Yetzer Hara is the Yetzer Hara really is afraid of success. The Yetzer Hara doesn't want us to do well. The Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to feel good. If you're feeling good, that's very dangerous for the Yetzer Hara. He wants you to feel down. He wants you to think about your Averis. He wants you to feel guilty. He wants you to feel that Hashem doesn't love you. Those are all the classic things at the Yetzer Hara. He wants you to be not motivated. Yes, Nachi, you're right. Get out of bed late, get this. Nachi, he knows he's not going to win you in that way. He knows he can't beat you in that because he knows you're doing great. He's going to get you in a much more deeper, subtle, sophisticated way. He's going to creep in your head somehow. Yes, Rabbi Zara.
Wanted to add, first of all, this idea that there are different types of Yetzer Hara depending on where a person is. Nachman speaks about this, that there's one type of Yetzer Hara that's like a mala that comes to a person. There's a different type, depending on like a person's level.
Right.
But this idea, like where the Yetzer Hara is it like negative traits? Is it something else? So something that I thought about it. So I just wanted to add what it seems to me that where most of us are holding, I think, is Yetzer Hara is basically, if a person would understand himself, like Roshi was talking about yesterday, a person would be able to figure himself out where his like negative traits have come from and like figure out his history, like he would definitely be able to, I think, change. So the Yetzer Hara's main thing is just keep things dark.
Exactly.
Keep things, don't ask questions.
Correct.
Don't
Exactly.
questioning.
Right.
That's the Yetzer Hara.
Correct. Keep things very, very on the DL, don't share. That's also something. It's good to talk about the Yetzer Hara. Stay alone, be alone. Don't share anything with anybody. You know, like you're saying, don't explore, don't ask questions, don't think. You know, keep things very, very hidden. Don't get clarity. Yetzer Hara is very, very good. I like that a lot. It's true. Keep things. That's why I love, this shir, and I love talking like this, because this is a way to banish your Yetzer Hara. And it doesn't just happen once in your life. That's why you got to do it every day. That's why you got to do it often. That's why you got to talk to people. What's life about? The Yetzer Hara wants you not to think about life. Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to think about death. Don't think about death. Don't think about the fact that actually one day you're actually going to be dead. Don't think about that. Don't think about, why do I chase money? Why do I chase pleasures? Why do I chase this? Am I a people pleaser? Am I a this? Analyze. Don't analyze yourself. Beautiful. Avram, you're going to have to say something. Because otherwise I'm going to introduce you anyway to say something. Or not.
For the first time,
I
don't understand a lot what's going on.
Okay.
Yetzer Hara,
right.
It's a little.
So do you want to? Should I mention to everyone your celebration, or you'd rather not? What? Could you share a little bit? Are you going to share a little bit about your celebration? You're not comfortable. Okay. So I guess I'll just share it. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, if you want. Fine.
Okay. So Avram's here. Avram Lichter. I don't know how many people know Avram. But Avram was in yeshiva how many years before you? What was it? 2 years? Your third year? Your third year. In his third year. So you talk about the Yetzer Hara and trying to uproot his Yetzer Hara. So today he celebrates a full year of not giving in to his Yetzer Hara of whatever, I don't know what specific drugs and alcohol. For today, he's celebrating 1 year of And I think what's incredible about that is that it's not about the drugs and the alcohol. It's about, I think, what Rabbi Zarat was saying. It's about escaping and running away from life. And he's celebrating a year of the opposite, which is facing life. Right? Somebody can. It's not about the drugs and the alcohol. You know, the alcohol and the drugs are just there to cover something up and to keep you in hiding of who you are and what life is about. It could be other ways. It could be being on your phone could distract you. It could be sleeping could distract you. It could be video games. It could be whatever it might be to just, I don't want to ask these questions. I don't want to face myself. And it's hard. It's hard. And there's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, makes the world. He makes things look like they're, that's the, right? I've shared this before in Mesilas Yesharim and in different shiurim when I remember being, watching these Mexicans going crab fishing, whatever they were, I don't know what you call it. It's not fishing because it's for crabs. Whatever they were going at the docks, right, at the Woodmere docks. I remember sitting there. I remember seeing these guys, and they lowered a beautiful drumstick, a raw drumstick on a hook, and they lowered it into the water, and then they would pull it back up, and they'd pull up. Every time they did this, there were like 10 crabs, like all around this raw drumstick, and then they would just peel off the crabs, put them in the bucket, and you have this beautiful raw drumstick, and they would lower it back. And I'm sitting there watching, I'm saying, wow, that is the Yetzer Hara. There it is, right there. What is the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara doesn't even let you enjoy. You end up being miserable. They don't even get, the crab doesn't even get to even eat the drumstick. That's what the Yetzer Hara. If the Yetzer Hara, like I've said this many times, if the drugs and the alcohol and all the craziness made you actually feel good about yourself, I don't know, maybe I'd join the club. I don't know. If you actually, felt good about yourself with all of these escapes, so then, okay, I'm actually feeding myself. But you end up feeling, it's funny, that's what the Gra said also, and one of the reasons why Torah and being successful in Ruchnius and working on yourself towards a higher connection is that ultimately that's what you're going to feel good about. All of these things don't leave us feeling good. So I'm left with what? With not even the drumstick. I don't even get the chicken. I don't even get the happiness out of it. So Avram, we'll give you another one. Shkoyach, Avi Lister. Can't imagine. Yes.
I used to learn Restless from Rabbi Yoni.
Yeah.
Rabbi Nachman has an example about the Yetzer Hara.
What, with the hand?
With the hand.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can really understand it. Like, where he comes over to me and says, "Hey, look, I have something that you want."
Right.
And then he runs away, and I chase him.
Right.
And, 30 minutes later, I'm far away from where I wanted to be, and he goes, "Oh, look, I don't actually have anything."
Right. That's true. Yeah, right, exactly. And I've heard on that mashal, I don't know if he says it, but they say he does it to everyone, and everyone imagines what they want. Right. So it's like, I have it, here it is, and you follow him down this path, and then he has nothing for you. And we know it. It's not like, oh gosh, we know it, but there's the Yetzer Hara. There's something pulling us. And one of the things that battles, and that's why it's important to talk about it. That's why it's important to say, you're mashal the Yetzer Hara. Rabbi Lazarus and Rabbi Zarat and Nachi and Binyamin, and everyone shares, and you talk about these things, then you're able to say, oh wow, me too. Oh, you too. Oh, negative. So it's not just a problem with me. It's not me. Maybe there's something that is consistent right? If everyone knows when you share something that helps you, if everyone knows feeling down, feeling sad, these are all normal, natural, healthy, regular feelings, right? It's like when the guy comes to me, oh, Rabbi, I'm having such a hard time getting up in the morning. I'm like, really? Really? You're having a hard time? Like, of course. Who doesn't have trouble getting up in the morning? Who doesn't have trouble, having trouble with this Yetzer Hara or that Yetzer Hara? Of course. What does that mean? You're human. We're human. The Yetzer Hara tells you that there's something wrong with you. Yetzer Hara tells you, right, like I said Friday night, I said it again, and I'll say it again because I think it's a great pshat. I made up this pshat. It fell to me min hashamayim. That I said that Kibo Hashemesh, that the sun set early for Yaakov Avinu. Maybe it's teaching us that sometimes we feel that the sun set too early, which means I'm not really supposed to be going through this. Yaakov Avinu thinking as the sun sets, wait, it's not supposed to be dark outside now. And you could have a taina to say, why is this happening? This should not be happening. But the truth is, no, it's supposed to be happening. I'm supposed to be dealing with this problem. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to have this, right? This is I think it's one of the pshatim they say, Ezehu, no, that's the pshat I said. It says, B'chol levavcha, in Veschanan, it says, B'chol levavcha, Rashi says two pshatim. One pshat he says, B'shnei yitzrecha, and the other pshat is, Shaloi tachloik al hamakom, which means don't argue on God. And I thought of a pshat once, or I heard a pshat once. So tachlok ala makom is hamakom asher ata oimed is admas kodesh. Some of the things that we struggle the most with is that I'm not supposed to be dealing with this. This is not what I'm supposed to be dealing with. This something's wrong. I'm not supposed to be here, whether physically or figuratively. I'm not supposed to be here. But that's not true. Shelo tachlok ala makom. You want to be connected to Hashem. You want to be connected to yourself. Stop fighting reality. Because when you fight reality, you only lose 100% of the time. You're going to lose every time when you're fighting. I'm not supposed to be going through this. I'm not supposed to have this struggle. I'm not supposed to have... How many people have a problem where they have a taiva and they can't accept the fact that they have this taiva? They're battling the fact that they have this taiva instead of saying, I have this taiva. There's nothing wrong. Not only there's nothing wrong, you have a taiva. It's Baruch Hashem, you have taivas. People don't have taivas. If you don't have a taiva, that means you're not well. People who have a taiva, it means they're alive. The question is, what am I doing with the taiva? How do I stop that taiva? How do I not stop having the taiva? How do I stop myself from giving in to my desires? But most of the time, the mistake is we challenge the fact that I have the taiva, right? Laziness. I'm lazy. I want to sleep in bed longer. There's nothing wrong with that. You're expecting yourself to jump out of bed. That's the problem. You're expecting yourself to jump out of bed. No, it's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to not give in to your desires. Reb Simcha Rabba, what do you say? Come on.
I just wanted to share.
Yes.
The Bazir Talmud was when I was struggling with something, me and my wife went together, and he said that his grandson had Yana Machla, and he said that the most rejuvenating words that he could tell his grandson was the doctor said that this was going to happen. So like when he would be like throwing up, and when he was like losing his hair, and was going through this whole thing, he said that his grandson like he lit up, and he was saying that when you know that Hashem said that this was going to happen, then it doesn't become an assignment anymore.
Exactly.
Because the doctor said it was going to happen. This is all part of the story. He said the Yetzer Hara is that like it's like phenomenal. What Rabbi was saying, al tafik al makam, like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So,
exactly.
But that's where we get caught. Right?
Yeah, correct. And I think that's, you talk about what the Yetzer Hara is. That's the talk of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is like, but I'm not supposed to be this. I'm not supposed to be going through this. I'm not supposed to be having this struggle. I'm supposed to be having that struggle. And it's almost like, and I'll say, it's good because usually we do the Chavetz Chaim, but I'll just say from the Mesil Sharm, it's actually what we said yesterday. And I saw this al pi Kabbalah. I think I say this every time we learn this in the Mesil Sharm, where he says, Chol Masha Barasi, it says, B'shah Shabar HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Adam Rishon. When Hashem created man, he took him to all of the world. And he said, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Don't ruin my world. Right? So I remember learning Al Pi Kabbalah many, many years. Not that I learned Kabbalah. I remember someone shared this with me in a sefer called Sharei Ora, which is a Kabbalah sefer. And I remember this pshat that they said, and I connected it to the Mesil Sharm, where it says, before a person's born, before you're born, Hashem shows you your parents, your family, your home. He shows you everything you're going to go through from the morning, from the day that you're born till the day that you die. And he shows you all the nisyonis that you're going to have. And you go ahead and you sign off on everyone that I'm in. I'm good. I'm going to do the best I can. Now, we don't know that because we're physical, we live in a physical world. But our neshama went through, like what Reb Simcha Rabbah is saying, is that our neshama knows exactly. Hara, which is the body, which is more the ego, the body, says, nah, you shouldn't be going there. Your neshama, right? It's one of the reasons you talk about Rav, I think it's from Rav Nachman, that I heard it, that's the pshat when people are in pain. It's a beautiful pshat. Why when people are in pain, they go like this, they close their eyes when they're in pain. So I heard this from one of the tzaddikim, but I think it might be Rav Nachman, that he said that when you go like this, you're squinting. When someone's squinting, they're trying to see far ahead. So he says that the neshama knows, when you're going through something, the neshama knows that ultimately this is perfect and this is beautiful. Just right now in Olam Hazeh, right now my physical body, I'm not able to know that it's good because I'm a regular person. But my neshama automatically has my eyes try and squint to see the future because I know it's going to be revealed to me that really this is exactly what I'm supposed to go through. It's an incredible thing. And I think that's what the Yetzer Hara will attack in a person. He'll keep you for a year, 2 years, 3 years, just saying, you're not supposed to be going through this. You're not supposed to be going through this. You're not supposed to be going through this. I'm supposed to be going through something else. Okay, amazing. Okay, let's learn one halacha of Chavetz Chaim, and then we will wrap up for today, unless anyone has another question or comment. Some say there is a heter to speak Lashon Hara about people who are in machlokas. People who are involved in a serious fight. Chavetz Chaim explains that even those opinions which allow it only say by blaming the guilty parties in the machlokas and putting them down, you will be able to quiet down and end the machlokas. Otherwise, it is not permitted. So he says you must be extremely careful before getting involved in any situation of machlokas. You must consider carefully and know according to the Torah and Halacha who is the guilty party in the machlokas. If you are not sure about it, it is better to do nothing at all than to mix into a dangerous argument. The Chavetz Chaim writes that we see more often than not that one who mixes into machlokas, even if he is missing just one of the necessary conditions, he will be over Lashon Hara, he causes even more trouble, ends up fanning the flames of machlokas. The person is an important individual, such as Talmid Chacham, he might be causing a chil Hashem as well. So a person has to be very, very careful to stay away from machlokas. Very careful, especially nowadays where, it's very hard for people to distinguish, and people say, everything is, there's a lot of different opinions about things, and it's always important to stay away from taking sides. Obviously you follow your Rebbe, you follow, you have someone who can guide you, but it's very important not to take sides of any machlokas. Okay. Question, comments, and then we'll wrap up. Yes, Rabbi Lazarus.
I'll get back to the Yetzer Hara.
Yes.
Chazal explained the Yetzer Hara as a dual personality. It's internal Yetzer Hara and external Yetzer Hara. If they work simultaneously, that means that whatever our weaknesses that we have, the Yetzer Hara will be allowed to set up a situation externally that will test us. So it could be if someone come over you and say something, you're trying to be careful with Yetzer Hara, with Loshon Hara, and someone will come over you. Yetzer Hara will send someone over to you who will start a conversation with Yetzer Hara to test you. That's how it works. At all the times, it's not just our internal Yetzer Hara or our external Yetzer Hara. It's usually both. A person is working on Shmir Seinayim, so the Yetzer Hara will send somebody that will test him.
Nice. Meaning first it's something that you internally are working on, and then the Yetzer Hara sends something externally. Okay, beautiful. Hashem should help us all. We should all be zocha. Of course, one of the biggest Yetzer Haras is your past. Always think about your past, or always worry about your future. That's for sure one of the biggest Yetzer Haras, as it says. As we say in davening, v'haser satan milfanenu u'miacharenu. Because where's the Yetzer Hara? He's either in our past or he's in our future. But in the present moment, the Yetzer Hara has trouble gaining track. All he wants is you either in your past or in your future. So Hashem will help us not to worry about our future, not to be obsessed about our past, but rather to focus on what and where we are now. Have a wonderful